So my follow-up is actually to my good friend and colleague, TJ Kennedy, on this one. So I'm going to be moderator, and you know, I'm smart enough, I've lived long enough to know the stir of the pot, but I don't boil the water. I'm going to leave that to other folks. So TJ, how do you feel about that answer? And you know, do you agree that that is an accurate characterization of the state of mission critical push to talk over broadband?
Harlan and I have argued about this, and we don't agree 100% on all of it. But there are good points from both sides, and I think that's important. The most important thing I think for today, and I'm gonna challenge Harlan to see if he'll agree with me on one point, which I think is important, which is let's set aside the terminology. I think the mission critical terminology is hypercharged. And I think that often brings us back to, you know, is it exactly the same as a land mobile radio? And you know, the only engineer in this call is my colleague, Jason Karp. Harlan and I are both public safety folks who actually understand technology, but you're the only electrical engineer here. So I'm not going to get into the fact that these are different technologies, right? They rely on a totally different deployment infrastructure of cell towers versus land mobile radio towers. Some are tall, some are small, different numbers. You know, a great example when I talk to public safety who's using push to talk, typically in a fully integrated fashion with their land mobile radio system, where they can have land mobile radio and they're able to use an over the top connectivity to be able to get to their LTE version of push to talk as well, and vice versa. You know, you could have arguments to your blue in the face that there are places LMR works and there are places LTE works, and in both cases the other one doesn't work.
Absolutely.
I mean, if we want to argue over in-building coverage, 9 times out of 10 in commercial buildings, LTE is going to beat LMR. If we want to talk about just total miles of coverage, LMR typically wins, but it could be in places where no one actually goes and there are no emergency calls, right? So, because it's just a bigger, more powerful radius around a bigger tower. And so those are just kind of lame arguments. I'm going to push those to the side. I think the important part is we now have reliable broadband. I'm going to call it reliable, not call it mission critical in some cases, but I can say hyper reliable. And this allows public safety to access the cloud, which gives them a lot more capabilities, not just for push to talk, but for a lot of other things that drive situational awareness and communications and better dispatch information and all those things put together, which by the way, are all the things we used to do solely over radio. In my day, everything had to go over the radio. We didn't have laptops when I started. We didn't have the ability to have an MDT when I started. That came as I was on the job. And so today, we have so much more information that never touches the radio. If we were to go into a dispatch center back in 1993 when I was a state trooper, and we go look at a dispatch center today, they are not the same place. How information moves, how much goes over broadband versus how much goes over radio are completely different. So we were talking some apples and oranges, first of all, on how we communicate. The second part is, I think it is a shame in 2020 if any agency is not using FirstNet push to talk or some push to talk application. Harlan gave some great examples about administration detectives, different uses that make the right use case capabilities. But I think everybody should have access to it because of the point that I brought up. If you're in a building and you can't get out on land mobile radio and you need help and your LTE push to talk device is working, you better have it. It's a second network. I would always take 2 networks versus 1 network. So I think in 2020, 100%. Thank you, Chief. 100% of the agencies, police, fire, and EMS, have to have push to talk in a cellular environment. I'll call it a FirstNet push to talk like solution that takes advantage of all the public safety solutions, which by the way are being built on mission critical 3GPP standards. When we refer to the standards and mission critical, and I know folks refer to the history of land mobile radio and mission critical, there's arguments over what that means. I'm going to put it in layman's terms that I think at the end of the day, these standards for things like the ability to notify that an officer or a firefighter is down is a great feature. Having the ability to have, you know, group call and different communication features are great features, much like what we have on land mobile radio, but they enhance the capabilities of a smartphone or other broadband technology. And shame on us if we're not giving them to our first responders today in 2020. We have to do it.
Yeah, there isn't anything you said I disagree with. It's just that, you know, I'm still a bit hesitant to use that, what you call hyper term of mission critical. You know, it in many cases, you're right, it's more reliable than land mobile today. You know, and so you shouldn't ignore that. You know, but the big issue is I don't want to abandon that until, you know, all the pieces are in place. And some, you know, if you don't have that, in parts of your jurisdiction. If you've got a big county and you've got land mobile coverage in that whole, my county is solidly covered with portable coverage. You know, obviously there's a place here and there, you got to have dead spots someplace. But the majority of the county is just solid. The cellular coverage is not yet there. It's getting there. It will be there someday. So once that's there, that eliminates most of the problem. The other problem is, again, having the capability of communicating if the network is down. And of course, that's
Either network.
What?
Either network.
Either
LMR or LTE.
Well, the point is that if you've got the land mobile network, if that's down, the talk unit to unit is the backup. That's what we have, and it's good. It's good. It works. I mean, you're not going to need to talk. I mean, if you've got simulcast and you can talk from one end of the county to the other with simulcast, that's a different issue. But if I'm on the scene of an emergency and all of a sudden the network goes down or I can't reach the network, you can talk unit to unit pretty good now in land mobile. There are options now being offered in broadband. The problem is they're not universal. They're different. Everybody's got a different version of it. Not everybody has the same capability. We've got to come up with a common way to do that in order for that to be as accessible as land mobile.
And that's going to continue to evolve over time. I think the biggest thing, and I'm going to die on my sword on this one here on April 21st of 2020, that I think every single public safety agency has to leverage public safety broadband capabilities like a FirstNet in addition to their land mobile radio system, and use it for video, voice, and data in addition to their land mobile radio system, and use them side by side, because I think they're giving very different kinds of capabilities and features, and I think that some of the robustness on the data and video and other side on broadband obviously is not done at all on land mobile radio. And so I think that there's features that are completely missing there, lots of them, if you don't have a good broadband public safety solution. So I think you have to have both.
Yeah,
and
I agree with you.
Point, yeah, I think
Well,
let
me just interject on one other issue that I haven't talked about in a public way like we're kind of planning this to be. I have come to the realization, which I'm sure most public safety people have yet to do, that at the moment when we still have land mobile and broadband devices, that a single device is a bad idea. And the reason is that you know, we still use these smartphones, which we can use for push to talk and data exchange and so on, for our cell phones, for our phone coverage. And I can do, you know, I have for years been able to do dual things. I can talk on the phone and hear my land mobile radio out of one ear, and I'm paying attention to what's going on. If they call me, I can hear them calling me while I'm talking to you on the phone. If I have one device and I'm talking on the phone, I can't be listening. It just isn't set up that way to the traffic, you know. So I'm trying to tell people, I mean, the big manufacturers years ago started thinking, well, we should just put in a, you know, a smartphone, you know, in an LMR radio, and then you got it all. You buy one device, you got it all. I'm not yet believing that you should do that. So I'm just saying it's not a competitive issue because all the major manufacturers are offering that. You can buy it or you don't have to buy it. I'm just telling my people in public safety, think about what you're doing there when you do that. If you have, first of all, you know, the nice part about a smartphone device is you can carry it in your pocket. You can't carry an LMR two-way in your, and so, you know.
It's a very big pocket.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
as you know, many agencies are now connecting their FirstNet to their LMR, and they can use it to talk with their people, which is to me exactly what they ought to be doing. I mean, then you've got a device that is, you know, wonderful for all purposes. But at the same time, if you're at the scene of a major fire and the fire chief's talking to on-ground people, the LMR radio is probably still going to be the preferred radio, you know?
Well, and you raised an important point that I think, you know, two parts to it I'm going to emphasize. One is that I think our legacy land mobile radio needs to be fully connected to our LTE public safety systems that we're doing, so that people can leverage the push to talk over cellular as well as push to talk over land mobile radio in a pretty ubiquitous fashion. And that makes it easy to use both. To your point, you have two different devices. You know, my example earlier of a police officer being in a building where they can't get out on LMR, they now can get out on LTE. You have to have that. That's just smart. And having two networks makes me feel more comfortable from a perspective of LTE and LMR. And I think that's a really smart thing today. The second thing is I'm a huge believer, as you know, in open standards, and that we need to drive open standard interoperability on the LMR side and on the LTE side, and that we need to continue to push for multiple options and innovation that are built on these open standards. And that goes, you know, obviously for these inner working capabilities, it goes for push to talk capabilities. It also goes for situational awareness capabilities and mapping and all the other tools. But I also just think, you know, we are in 2020 and we have to have these capabilities in the hands, to your point, and I appreciate you saying that you're a believer now in really carrying two devices, right? We need a smartphone broadband public safety device, and we need a land mobile radio device, and that's a big change from where you might have been in the past, right? I mean, it's it's an evolution, and we can all admit that, right? That the technology has improved, things have changed, and we see benefits to having those capabilities. And I just think we need to be issuing those, you know, both devices to all of our first responders and giving them that public safety grade capability in both devices.
And how they use it, right? I mean, we live in a big country and a lot of different geographies, a lot of different use cases, right? And we've seen and we've heard, you know, folks who are, you know, basically 99% of the time relying on their LTE device, push to talk and otherwise. You know, you get west of the Mississippi and you've got other issues, and you've got geography issues. Yeah, so a lot of this is, you know, I think also get it in the hands of the first responders, and then they're going to use it how they need to use it, right? So I've always said, and I know TJ, I think, agrees with me on this, is the first responder at the end of the day determines what works and what's mission critical for them. You know, and I think this debate is phenomenal, and I think it's one that needs to continue and is really important. But at the end of the day, to TJ's point, we have to put these tools in their hands, let them experience it, remove all the preconceived notions about, you know, whether there's coverage or it's not, if it's holes in the cellular network versus, you know, the super hardened LMR network. We've all seen situations where LMR has gone down and broadband stayed up, and vice versa. You've got the off-net issue that you mentioned, Chief, you know, and what are the solutions, you know, today for that, and what are they going to be in 6 months and 12 months and 18 months? That's going to evolve. That's why we have to get it in their hands. That, you know, that's my view, is they've got to use it, they've got to feel it, they've got to touch it, and then they're going to adapt based on their specific use case.
I agree.
So, well, great.
Chief McEwen, always fun getting together and chatting. I appreciate you going on the recording here with Jason and I and talking about the issues that are most prevalent for public safety today. And hopefully we can keep doing this and talking about technology as it evolves and what public safety needs to have.
Great. It was nice to talk to you, and hope we covered the topics that you wanted. I think, you know, it gives you the history, it gives you what's going on today, and it gives you a little bit of the vision for the future. So
listen, you're the grandfather of public safety technology. There's nobody who knows it better, who's seen more of it. And so absolutely phenomenal. Appreciate you coming on and giving us your insights. I appreciate you putting up with TJ. You know, I'm really here to just kind of keep him in line more than anything else. So, you know, I like to thank you for your patience in that regard. Unfortunately, I have to deal with him every day. So it is what it is.
I've learned to live with him pretty good.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No. I've been able to grow on Harlan. He even likes me now, but I mean, we butted heads a bunch in the beginning, but I think we actually worked really, really well together.
Absolutely. No, it's a good team. It's a good team.
All right. Well, thanks, guys.
Thanks, Chief. We really appreciate it.
Okay. Bye.
Take care. Bye.